The late autumn wind swept across the small town of Winchester, Virginia, rattling the faded porch flags and carrying the scent of pine from the nearby woods. Inside a modest two-story house with peeling white paint, Elisa Morgan, a 16-year-old high school junior, was finishing her morning push-ups, her palms pressed against the cold wooden floor, sweat dripping in quiet rhythm. Outside, the neighborhood was still asleep. Every morning began the same way. Run, push-ups, sit-ups, cold shower. While other girls were scrolling through their phones or choosing outfits, Elisa laced her shoes and ran until her lungs burned. She wasn't chasing vanity or medals. She was chasing a dream everyone told her didn't belong to her. It started years ago, the night she sat beside her father's chair as he told stories from his days as a Navy diver. He described the deep silence beneath the ocean, the way fear vanished when training kicked in, the brotherhood that came from surviving together. Elisa would sit wide-eyed, listening, every word planting something fierce inside her. Then, when she was 12, her father didn't come home. His unit had been caught in an underwater training accident off the coast of Florida. The Navy folded a flag and handed it to her mother. Elisa held it tight, vowing one thing: she'd finish what he started. But when she told people she wanted to become a Navy SEAL, laughter was the only reply. At lunch in high school, she once said it out loud, her eyes bright with conviction. "I'm going to be a SEAL," she told a group of classmates. The table went silent, then erupted in giggles. "SEAL? You mean like the animal?" One boy joked. Another added, "They don't even let girls do that." "What? You gonna paint your nails in boot camp?" Elisa just smiled, even though her stomach twisted. "We'll see," she said quietly, then went back to eating. That night, she ran an extra 2 miles. Every insult became a mile. Every laugh became a push-up. Her mother didn't understand either. "Sweetheart, you can serve in other ways," she said softly one evening. "The SEALs, that's different. They'll break you." Elisa looked up from her training plan. "Then they'll have to try really hard," she replied. Her mother sighed. "Your father Dad would have told me not to quit," Elisa cut in gently, eyes firm. It wasn't arrogance. It was faith, the kind that burned quietly, like a coal that never died. When Elisa turned 18, she applied for the U.S. Naval Academy. Her guidance counselor looked at her file and frowned. "You have the grades," he said, "and your physical scores are exceptional. But Elisa, the SEAL pipeline isn't open to women. You know that, right?" Elisa nodded. "Then I'll be ready when it is." He chuckled softly, almost pitying her. "You're serious?" She simply smiled. Completely. A few months later, an envelope with a Navy SEAL arrived. Accepted. The first day at the academy hit like a storm. The air smelled of iron and salt. Drill instructors barked commands. Cadets sprinted across the grounds, uniforms crisp, eyes fierce. Elisa stood among hundreds, the only woman in her training group. The others noticed immediately. "Hey, looks like we got a mascot," one cadet whispered. Another grinned. "She be gone by the weekend." Elisa ignored them, her face expressionless, her mind whispering the same silent mantra. You don't have to prove them wrong. Just don't quit. That night, after lights out, 5 cadets sat together at the far end of the barracks. Thompson, Riker, Hayes, Miller, and Stone, the sons of high-ranking officers, confident and untouchable. "She actually thinks she's going to be a SEAL?" Riker snorted. Miller laughed. "Maybe she'll bring us cookies during training." Thompson smirked. "Nah, she'll cry during PT and quit. I give her 3 days." They all laughed, loud enough for Elisa to hear from her bunk. She didn't say a word. Instead, she turned to face the wall, and tightened her fists beneath her pillow. Her shoulder muscles burned from the day's drills, but the pain only sharpened her resolve. When the morning whistle blew at 4:30 a.m., she was the first one outside. The days that followed were hell, designed to be. Pre-dawn runs across icy sand, obstacle courses through mud, endless planks, log carries, and freezing ocean plunges. Alyssa's body screamed, but her mind didn't waver. She trained with a precision that startled even her instructors. While others complained, she listened. While some cut corners, she did extra reps. Once, after a grueling drill, Instructor Davis, a stern-faced veteran SEAL, stopped her. "Morgan," he said, "you trying to make everyone else look bad?" She straightened. "No, sir. Just trying to make myself better." He studied her for a moment, then nodded slightly. "Keep that attitude. It's the only thing that'll keep you alive." But the 5 cadets didn't stop. They called her SEAL Barbie. They snickered when she ran by. Once, during an equipment drill, someone switched her weighted pack, with one nearly double in weight. Alyssa didn't report it. She carried it, silently, painfully, all the way through the march. When they finished, her shoulders were bruised purple. Miller smirked. "Tired yet, Barbie?" Alyssa looked him dead in the eye. Not even close. That night, she went back to the training field and ran sprints alone under the floodlights. Each breath came sharp, each step louder. The guards watching from the tower shook their heads. She was different. Days turned into weeks. The laughter faded, replaced by confusion. The cadets began noticing her times, faster, sharper, cleaner. During endurance runs, she finished in the top 5. During obstacle courses, she led her squad. Even the instructors stopped doubting her. But Alyssa didn't notice the change. She was too focused on surviving. Every night, as the rest of the barracks slept, she'd sit by her bunk, writing in a small notebook. "Be stronger tomorrow. Be silent until you're uncheckable. They'll remember the one they laughed at." One stormy morning, during a tactical swim test, waves crashed so violently that even seasoned cadets hesitated to enter the water. The sky turned gray, the whistle blew, and one by one, the swimmers dove in. Alyssa waited until last. She took a deep breath and dove, slicing through the waves like a blade. Halfway through, lightning flashed overhead. The instructors called for an emergency pullout, but Alyssa didn't hear. Her mind was back home, seeing her father's proud smile, feeling the folded flag in her hands. When she finally reached the end of the course, everyone had stopped. She stood dripping and gasping as the others stared. Even Thompson, the loudest of the 5, couldn't find a joke. One instructor muttered, "She's insane." Another replied, "No, she's unbreakable." That night, as Alyssa cleaned her boots in silence, a note appeared on her bunk, a crumpled scrap of paper. Scrawled in rough handwriting, it read, "Didn't think you'd make it this far? Respect." No name, no signature. But she didn't need one. She smiled faintly, folded the note, and tucked it into her notebook. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was changing minds. As winter rolled in, Alyssa stood at the edge of the training field during morning formation, frost clinging to her boots. The commander announced the next phase, Hell Week, the test that broke nearly every cadet. She glanced down the line at the 5 who once mocked her. Thompson caught her eye. No smirk this time, just a curious, wary look. Alyssa's heart pounded, but her face stayed calm. This was the moment she'd trained her whole life for. And as the sun rose behind the academy walls, Alyssa whispered under her breath, "Laugh if you want. I'll still be standing when it's over." She didn't know then how brutal the coming days would be, or how they'd push her to the edge of collapse. But she did know one thing with absolute certainty. She wasn't here to prove she was a woman who could fight. She was here to prove she was a SEAL who never quit. The first weeks at the Naval Academy were a storm Alyssa had predicted, but she hadn't anticipated the intensity of human judgment. The physical challenges were grueling, yes, but it was the whispers, smirks, and stares that cut deeper than any obstacle course. The 5 cadets, Thompson, Riker, Hayes, Miller, and Stone, seemed determined to make her life unbearable. Each morning, as Alyssa ran alongside them during formation, their jokes began early. "Morning, Barbie," Miller called once, voice dripping with sarcasm. "Did you pack your hairbrush for the swim drill?" Riker added, laughing. Alyssa didn't respond. She had learned early that the fastest way to win was silence and action. Her legs burned, lungs screamed, but she pressed on, pushing each step into a rhythm of defiance. Every mocking laugh, every sideways glance became fuel. During one obstacle course, the 5 cadets deliberately left her behind during a log carry drill. The massive wooden beam pressed into her shoulders, mud squishing between her toes. Her muscles trembled, but she refused to drop it. She could hear them ahead, shouting encouragement to each other, ignoring her struggle. "Hey, Barbie," Stone yelled. "Need a hand?" Alyssa gritted her teeth and moved forward, each step a statement. By the end of the course, she had not only caught up, she finished before them, sweat stinging her eyes, arms trembling, shoulders bruised. For a moment, the laughter faltered. The 5 cadets exchanged glances, confusion flickering across their faces. Nightfall brought no relief. The cadets taunted her during roll calls, whispered in the hallways, and left notes on her bunk. One read, "Seriously, what are you thinking? You'll never survive Hell Week. Just quit now." Instead of anger, Alyssa felt a quiet calm. She tore the note in half, tucked a piece in her notebook, and made a mental promise. "Every step they doubt me, I'll go 2 more." Her resolve only strengthened after seeing other cadets crumble. Even some of the men in her squad, stronger and more experienced, faltered under the relentless intensity. The Academy's daily grind wasn't just physical. It was psychological warfare. Cadets were pushed to exhaustion, starvation, and fear, and the instructors watched closely to see who would break first. Alyssa refused to break. One morning, the squad was ordered into a pre-dawn endurance swim. The Atlantic's waves crashed violently against the rocky shoreline. Alyssa felt her stomach tighten, but she focused on her father's memory, imagining his steady hands guiding her. The 5 cadets splashed alongside her, smirking, confident she would panic. The instructor blew the whistle. The men dove in first, thrashing through the waves. Alyssa waited a beat, then slipped in silently. She moved with calm precision, each stroke cutting through the water. Halfway through, a wave slammed her face first into the water, but she pushed forward, inhaling sharp breaths between swells. By the time the swim ended, she was the first out. Her hair clung to her face, water dripping from her uniform, but she stood tall, chest heaving. The 5 cadets stared, mouths open. The smirk was gone. It wasn't just her physical ability that surprised them. It was her resilience under pressure. She could fall, bleed, sweat, or gasp, but she never stopped moving forward. One afternoon, during a 12-mile loaded march through freezing rain, the 5 cadets tried to sabotage her again, slipping a heavier pack onto her back while she tied her boots. Alyssa noticed immediately, but instead of complaining, she adjusted, nodded to herself, and continued. Hours later, she crossed the finish line 10 minutes ahead of all 5. The instructors, impressed, exchanged silent nods. Thompson muttered under his breath, "How the hell?" Hayes clenched his fists, face red. "She can't be human." Alyssa didn't respond. She walked past them, mud-soaked, silent, letting the proof speak for itself. The emotional warfare was even harder. During dinner, while cadets laughed and joked, she ate silently, reading her notes on SEAL history. When they tried to isolate her socially, she kept to herself, but remained visible, refusing to retreat into a corner. Every day, she learned more about tactical strategy, survival, and leadership, preparing for a test that most wouldn't survive. Her persistence began to attract attention, both positive and negative. Some cadets quietly started following her lead during drills, while others whispered that she was too strong, too disciplined, too determined. Elisa's reputation was growing, but she ignored gossip. She had one focus, becoming a SEAL. One evening, the cadets' harassment escalated. During a group obstacle drill, Miller shouted across the course, "Hey, Barbie, don't hurt yourself trying to keep up with men." Elisa's hands were raw from rope climbs and crawling through mud. Her back screamed, but she didn't stop. Instead, she sped up, navigating the obstacles with precision. By the end of the drill, she had completed the course faster than any male cadet. The 5 cadets fell silent, astonishment flashing across their faces. Riker muttered, "How?" Thompson, the loudest, stared at her for a long moment. Then his jaw tightened. For the first time, he felt uneasy. By now, instructors began noticing her too. Captain Davis, a gruff veteran with years of SEAL experience, approached her one day during a break. "Morgan," he said, eyes scanning her, "you're doing everything right. But Hell Week is coming. This intensity? It's nothing compared to what's next." Alyssa nodded, sweat trickling down her temple. "I'm ready, sir." He raised an eyebrow. "Most men aren't. Most women aren't. You've got a choice. Quit or show us something none of the cadets can believe." Elisa's lips pressed into a thin line. "I'll show you." The 5 cadets, oblivious, continued their quiet campaign. Notes on her bunk, jokes in the halls, whispers in the showers. But Alyssa started turning it into strategy. Instead of retaliating, she used the harassment as fuel. Every insult became energy for training. Every snide comment, a mental drill. Every laugh, a reminder. You will remember my name. One night, after a grueling 10-mile run, she sat under a lamppost on the academy's edge. The sky was ink black, rain slicking the ground. Her muscles trembled, exhausted, but her eyes sparkled with determination. She whispered to herself, "They don't believe I belong. Good. I'll prove them wrong, every step, every breath, every day." In that moment, Alyssa wasn't just a cadet. She was a force that refused to break, a spark that would ignite a storm in the hearts of every person who doubted her. The days passed. Weeks turned into months. The laughter from the 5 cadets slowly diminished, replaced by unease and subtle respect they couldn't admit. She didn't celebrate. There was no triumph yet, only preparation for the ultimate test. Hell Week. The academy had a way of crushing the proud, the strong, the stubborn. But Alyssa had survived not just the physical trials, but the psychological onslaught. And as she lay on her bunk that night, staring at the ceiling, she knew one thing. When the real challenge came, she wouldn't just survive. She would lead, endure, and dominate. And the 5 cadets who once mocked her would witness it all. The first day of Hell Week arrived with a silence that felt almost sacred, the kind of silence that whispers of impending chaos. A gray, oppressive fog hung over the academy grounds as cadets lined up in formation, water dripping from the sky. Rain soaked their uniforms, mud clinging to boots, faces pale with anticipation. The commanding officer's whistle cut through the cold, signaling the start of something designed to break even the strongest cadets. For Alyssa, the moment was both terrifying and exhilarating. This was the crucible she had been preparing for since she first whispered to herself, "I will be a SEAL, The first exercise was a log. Carry through a swampy obstacle course, each team responsible for hoisting a massive 200-pound log above their shoulders while navigating through mud pits, tangled ropes, and freezing water. Elisa's team had 5 male cadets she had fought alongside and fought against in silence. The 5 who had mocked her, the ones who had doubted her every step of the way, were watching closely. The log was slippery from rain, and each movement sent shocks of pain through her shoulders. Halfway through the course, a sudden misstep caused the log to shift, and Elisa felt a sharp pain tear through her right shoulder. She stumbled, falling forward into the mud. Her heart raced, and her breath came in short gasps. The 5 cadets laughed. "Guess the Barbie seal can't handle a little mud," Thompson said, smirking. Elisa's first instinct was to cry out, to give in, but something deeper within her refused. She gritted her teeth, ignoring the pain. Slowly, painfully, she lifted herself back to her knees and adjusted her grip on the log. Every inch forward was agony. Every step required sheer willpower. The rest of the course was a blur of exertion. Mud clogged her boots, rain stung her eyes, and the log's weight pressed relentlessly on her shoulder. Her teammates struggled too, slipping and sliding, but none of them seemed to notice the effort she poured into every step. The whispers of the 5 cadets rang in her ears. "She's gonna collapse any second now." Elisa didn't collapse. She pushed forward, step by step, breath by breath. Pain was no longer an enemy. It was a companion, a reminder that she could endure far more than anyone expected. By the time she reached the finish line, her uniform shredded and her body trembling. The instructors were watching her closely, whispers passing between them. "She's tougher than most men I've trained," one muttered. Elisa's heart pounded, not from pride, but because she knew this was only the beginning. Later that evening, the cadets were forced into the night navigation drill, a grueling trek across uneven terrain, blindfolded, with only the commands of their team leaders to guide them. The 5 cadets who had mocked her earlier tried to take control, barking orders at the others. Elisa's shoulder throbbed from the morning's injury, her muscles screaming in protest, but she followed the rhythm of her mind, moving with precision, focusing on balance, breathing, and strategy rather than speed. Halfway through, one of her male teammates slipped into a hidden creek. Without hesitation, Elisa grabbed him, pulling him to safety despite the sharp jolt of pain in her shoulder. The 5 cadets who had laughed at her looked on, suddenly unsure, witnessing a combination of physical strength and courage they had never expected from her. "She's different," Hayes muttered, almost inaudibly. By the 3rd day of Hell Week, exhaustion had become an omnipresent force. Cadets were running on mere hours of sleep, muscles fatigued, minds fraying at the edges. Their bodies screamed, but their training demanded one more mile, one more climb, one more push. Elisa's shoulder had swollen overnight, the bruises forming dark purple streaks across her skin. Every movement was agony, every breath a test. During the underwater log drag, cadets had to drag heavy logs through a frigid pond while submerged. The water was icy, sucking the warmth from her body, her lungs burning with each stroke. The pain in her shoulder flared with every pull, but she refused to surface. Not yet, not ever. She could hear the instructors' whistles, cutting through the cold, calling cadets to the surface. She could hear the laughter from the 5 cadets, who had somehow survived the exercise, but were now struggling. They whispered among themselves, clearly shaken by her persistence. "How is she still moving?" Riker hissed. Elisa didn't answer. She kept her jaw tight, eyes forward, dragging the log until the final whistle blew. When she finally emerged, the instructors were stunned. She had completed the task faster than any other cadet, including all the men. But the body could only endure so much. During the night infiltration drill, Alyssa's shoulder finally gave way. A sharp, burning pain shot down her arm, and she collapsed into the mud. Tears of frustration burned her eyes, but she refused to call for help. Pain was temporary. Quitting was permanent. She crawled forward, every movement sending jolts of agony through her body, dragging herself inch by inch through the darkness. She felt a hand touch her shoulder. She looked up to see one of the 5 cadets, not Thompson, not Riker, but Stone, offering assistance. "You don't have to do this alone," he said quietly. Alyssa shook her head. "I do," she whispered. "This is my fight." Stone looked at her, confused, then nodded silently. Even her enemies were beginning to understand that this was bigger than competition. This was a battle of will, not gender. By the 4th night, the cadets were on the brink of collapse. Sleep deprivation, hunger, physical injury, everything had combined to create a storm of exhaustion. Alyssa sat alone for a moment, shoulder throbbing, mud caked into every crevice of her uniform, staring up at the gray sky. Doubts crept in, whispering at the edges of her mind. Maybe I can't. Maybe I'm too weak. Maybe they were right. But then she remembered her father. She remembered his unwavering voice, the way he had always told her to push past fear, past weakness. She imagined his eyes, calm and proud, watching her from somewhere beyond. And in that moment, something inside her snapped into focus. I am not weak. I am not quitting. I am a SEAL. The final test of the day was the high obstacle course, designed to crush morale. Tall walls, rope ladders, suspended platforms, and narrow beams. Cadets trembled at the first climb. The 5 who had mocked her were tense, their earlier confidence shattered. Alyssa's shoulders screamed with every lift, but she climbed with determination, never hesitating. At the top of the final wall, she paused, looking down at the cadets below. Her chest heaved, her body screamed, but she smiled faintly. She could see their faces, awe, disbelief, and a newfound respect replacing their earlier scorn. When she dropped down the final obstacle, she landed solidly, mud and water dripping from her uniform, exhausted beyond belief. The instructors stood silently, nodding in approval. The 5 cadets were speechless. Thompson finally muttered, almost grudgingly, She's unstoppable." Alyssa didn't respond. She had no need to. Her actions had already spoken louder than any words ever could. That night, Alyssa lay on her bunk, shoulder throbbing, mind racing. The pain was unbearable, the exhaustion total. Every bone, every muscle, every fiber of her being demanded she stop, that she surrender. But she closed her eyes and whispered one word over and over. Persist, persist, persist. She knew this was only the beginning. Hell Week was far from over. The battles ahead would test her mind, body, and spirit in ways she could not yet imagine. But for the first time, she felt it. A spark of triumph, tiny but unbreakable, rising from the ashes of pain and doubt. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was proving something to herself, to the instructors, and most of all, to the 5 cadets who had once laughed. They would remember her name. And by the end of Hell Week, they would know exactly what a SEAL could do. The morning air was sharp and biting as Alyssa Morgan laced up her boots for another day at the Naval Academy. Her shoulder still throbbed from Hell Week's grueling exercises. Every step a reminder of pain endured, but her mind was clear. She had survived what most cadets, men and women alike, could not. She had crawled through mud, battled exhaustion, and fought pain that would have broken anyone else. And now something had shifted. The laughter of the 5 cadets who had tormented her for months was gone, replaced not by silence alone, but by uneasy attention, a wary acknowledgement of a force they had underestimated. Her first challenge that morning was a 14-mile loaded march through the academy grounds. Cadets were weighted down with gear, bodies screaming from fatigue, every mile testing endurance and spirit. Most faltered halfway, exhausted, some collapsing into the wet grass. Alyssa ran in rhythm, ignoring the fire in her lungs, the ache in her muscles, and the throbbing pain in her shoulder. Each step was deliberate, purposeful. Her mind was sharper than ever, her body pushed to its limits, but refusing to surrender. She could hear the whispers of the other cadets behind her. How is she keeping pace? She's faster than us. She can't be human. The 5 cadets, Thompson, Riker, Hayes, Miller, and Stone, fell further behind. Their disbelief was palpable. For the first time, they were no longer confident in her failure. Instead, they were witnessing her rise, step by relentless step. By the 7th mile, cadets were faltering, their heavy boots sinking into mud, bodies drenched and shivering from the rain. Alyssa's pace remained steady, her face focused and unyielding. She caught up with a struggling teammate and offered a hand. "Keep moving," she said, voice firm but calm. "We finish together." The teammate nodded, drawing strength from her determination. Together, they pushed through, finally crossing the finish line, far ahead of the rest. Instructors watched in awe, murmuring among themselves. Captain Davis, a veteran SEAL with decades of experience, shook his head. "I've trained men who couldn't survive half of this. She's something else." Alyssa didn't celebrate. She simply nodded, knowing this was just the beginning. The next test was water endurance and rescue drills. Cadets were required to swim through freezing channels, dragging heavy dummies, and navigating underwater obstacles. Most of the male cadets struggled, their muscles cramping, panic flashing in their eyes. Alyssa dove in, her movements precise, her breathing controlled. She dragged the dummy through choppy waves, rotated underwater with ease, and surfaced with unbroken rhythm. One of the 5 cadets, Hayes, splashed nearby, clearly struggling. He looked over at her with incredulous eyes. How are you still moving?" Alyssa didn't answer. She focused on the rhythm, the calm, the precision. She wasn't competing with them. She was surpassing limits they didn't even know existed. Word of her performance spread quickly. Other cadets began calling her Steelheart, a name whispered in awe during water drills, obstacle courses, and endurance marches. It was not just her strength, but her unbreakable spirit, her ability to push forward when everyone else faltered. The 5 cadets who had once mocked her watched from the sidelines, their confidence shattered. Thompson, the loudest and most condescending, clenched his fists during drills, jaw tight. He had thought her persistence would fade after injury, that fatigue would topple her. But she had grown stronger, faster, smarter, and unstoppable. One afternoon, during a high-stakes tactical exercise, the cadets were tasked with navigating a simulated ambush. Teams had to work under pressure, improvising to complete the mission. The 5 cadets had assumed control, their arrogance unshaken, until Alyssa took the lead. "Move silently. Check the perimeter. Riker, cover left. Miller, take the right flank. Hayes, stay close to me." Her voice was calm, authoritative, unwavering. The others followed without hesitation, executing her instructions flawlessly. Within minutes, the simulation was complete, objectives achieved with precision. The commanding officer, observing from a distance, shook his head. "I've seen leaders before," he muttered to the instructor beside him. "But she commands presence. That's rare." The 5 cadets who had once laughed at her could only stare. Their earlier scorn had turned to awe, a grudging recognition of a skill and courage they had failed to anticipate. Even the instructors began testing her in ways they hadn't before. During a night navigation drill, cadets were blindfolded and forced to navigate uneven terrain. Elisa's team faltered initially, unsure of directions. But she guided them calmly, every step deliberate, every instruction precise. Her voice cut through the fog, offering clarity and assurance. By the end of the drill, they reached the checkpoint far ahead of the others. The instructors nodded approvingly. "She's not just surviving, she's leading. That's what makes a SEAL," one said. Elisa, soaked and exhausted, smiled faintly. She didn't need recognition. Her drive wasn't for validation. It was proof to herself that limits were meant to be surpassed. The rise of Steelheart was not only physical, but mental. Where other cadets panicked, she calculated. Where others faltered under pressure, she adapted. The 5 cadets who had mocked her earlier became increasingly uneasy, their attempts at sarcasm faltering. Their jokes no longer carried weight. During a team endurance test, she even motivated cadets who were falling behind. Her presence inspired action. Where fear had ruled, now discipline and resolve took over. One cadet whispered in awe, "She's not just surviving. She's showing us what it means to fight." Elisa didn't smile. She didn't need to. Every move, every breath, every decision spoke louder than any expression ever could. The pivotal moment came during the final obstacle of the week, a towering rope ladder leading to a narrow suspended beam. Cadets had to cross while carrying heavy packs, balance precariously, and rappel down. Many had failed the previous day. Elisa stepped up, shoulders screaming from prior injuries, hands blistered, soaked in rain. She climbed swiftly, muscles straining, eyes fixed forward. At the top, she paused for a brief second, scanning the course. She calculated every step, every balance shift, every breath. Then, without hesitation, she moved across the beam, pack secured, chest heaving, body trembling. When she descended, she landed solidly, mud-slick boots gripping the ground. The instructors watched, amazed. Other cadets clapped instinctively. The 5 who had once mocked her were speechless. Thompson muttered under his breath, She's untouchable." By the end of the day, Elisa had solidified her reputation. She had earned the moniker Steelheart, not because she had survived Hell Week, but because she had transformed every ounce of doubt, pain, and mockery into power, focus, and leadership. For the first time, the 5 cadets who had ridiculed her were forced to confront reality. The girl they had laughed at was unbreakable, a force of sheer will and discipline. And they were now following her example, sometimes reluctantly, but inevitably. Elisa lay on her bunk that night, mud-stained and bruised, reflecting on the week. She allowed herself a small smile. Not for recognition, not for revenge, but because she had proven to herself that nothing could break her spirit. Her notebook lay open beside her. She wrote, "Limits exist only to be surpassed. Fear exists only to be conquered. I am not just surviving, I am leading." And somewhere deep inside, she felt it. The spark of a leader, unshakable and undeniable, had fully ignited. Steelheart had risen. The morning was cold and gray, the kind of chill that cuts through layers and seeps into bones. The cadets assembled on the parade ground for a surprise mission announced by Commander Harris, a seasoned Navy officer known for testing the cadets' mental, physical, and emotional limits. "Today," the commander began, voice booming, "you will operate as independent squads in a tactical simulation. Objectives: reconnaissance, ambush response, and extraction. Team leaders choose wisely." The 5 cadets who had laughed at Elisa months ago immediately gathered together, whispering, confident in their own superiority. Thompson, the unofficial alpha, smirked. "We lead. She doesn't get to pick. She's just a rookie. Let's show her what a real SEAL does." Elisa, shoulders still stiff from previous injuries, but spirit unbroken, stood apart, observing. She knew this mission would not just test her physical skill, but her mind and her ability to command under pressure. She waited, calculating, patient. The teens were dispatched into a dense, fog-laden training field. Trees loomed like sentinels, the ground soaked from a night of rain. Cadets moved quietly, communicating only in whispers. The 5 cadet squad took the lead, moving with loud confidence. But it didn't take long for chaos to strike. As they approached a simulated ambush zone, Thompson misread the terrain, sending half his team into a trap of tripwires and mud pits. Panic rippled through the group. Elisa, observing from a ridge nearby, assessed the situation instantly. Her eyes narrowed. She could see the disarray, the panic, the lack of coordinated communication. The cadets who had once mocked her were struggling because they were relying on ego instead of strategy. She sprinted down to the squad, taking command without hesitation. "Form on me, quiet. Eyes forward." Her voice was calm but authoritative, carrying over the chaos. The 5 cadets froze for a second. They hadn't expected her to step up. I said move. Riker, cover left. Miller, right flank. Thompson, stabilize your team. The cadets followed her instructions, some reluctantly, some with disbelief. Slowly, the chaos began to recede as her commands imposed structure and efficiency. The simulation intensified. Smoke bombs filled the air, obscuring vision. Loud detonations echoed through the trees, forcing the cadets to make split-second decisions. Elisa moved fluidly among them, observing weaknesses, correcting mistakes, and providing solutions without hesitation. Stone, suppress fire. Hayes, check the perimeter. Keep moving. Each instruction was precise, each action deliberate. Cadets who had struggled before now moved with purpose, responding instantly to her leadership. Thompson, who had laughed at her relentlessly, now followed, jaw tight, pride swallowed by necessity. She knows what she's doing, he muttered under his breath. Halfway through the mission, the squad reached a simulated hostage point. The exercise demanded quick assessment, teamwork, and strategic thinking. Cadets were required to neutralize threats without harming hostages. Elisa took the lead. She assessed positions, issued silent hand signals, and coordinated movements that allowed the team to reach the objective without triggering any simulated casualties. The 5 cadets who had mocked her were awestruck. The precision, the calm under pressure, the decisiveness, they had never seen anything like it. She's a real leader, Miller whispered to Riker. By the time the squad completed the mission, every obstacle had been cleared. Every decision, every movement executed flawlessly under her command. The instructors, observing from concealed positions, exchanged impressed glances. Captain Davis muttered, "That was textbook." She led like a seasoned officer. Back at the base camp, the 5 cadets approached her, faces a mixture of pride, embarrassment, and awe. Thompson cleared his throat, struggling for words. Elisa, you did what we couldn't. You led perfectly." Elisa, still catching her breath, glanced at them. Her face was calm, unreadable. "I didn't do it for you," she said softly. "I did it because it had to be done. Leadership isn't about proving anyone wrong. It's about achieving the mission." Riker nodded, swallowing his pride. We should have never doubted you." Her gaze softened for a brief moment, but there was no triumph in her eyes. Only the quiet confidence of someone who had endured and earned respect the hard way. The day didn't end there. The squad was sent through a night extraction drill, navigating with minimal visibility, carrying equipment, and maintaining stealth. Cadets who had faltered earlier were struggling under fatigue. Elisa, however, moved with relentless precision, calculating distances, adjusting pace, and issuing commands that maximized efficiency and safety. Hayes, quiet. Keep close. Stone, eyes on the rear. Miller, signal if you see movement. Even in near darkness, her team moved as one cohesive unit. Every cadet was aware of her presence, responding instinctively to her commands. By the time the simulation concluded, the squad had completed it without a single mistake, an achievement the instructors declared nearly unprecedented. The 5 cadets who had once mocked her were no longer skeptical. They were awed, humbled by the girl they had assumed would fail. She's a SEAL, Thompson muttered under his breath, as if saying it aloud made it real. Later, as cadets gathered around the instructors for debriefing, Alyssa remained silent. She didn't seek recognition, didn't demand praise. The instructors spoke. Cadet Morgan, your leadership today was exceptional. Calm, precise, strategic. You not only completed the mission, you elevated your team. That is the mark of a true SEAL. Applause erupted, and Alyssa finally allowed herself a small smile. Not for herself, but for the mission accomplished, for every challenge she had endured to reach this point. The 5 cadets approached again, standing awkwardly, unsure how to respond. Finally, Hayes stepped forward. We? I don't know what to say. You proved everything we thought we knew was wrong. Alyssa met his gaze, voice steady. I didn't prove anything to you. I just did what was necessary. For the first time, there was no laughter, no ridicule, no doubt, only respect. That night, Alyssa lay on her bunk, exhausted beyond comprehension, but a quiet satisfaction settled in her chest. The mission had changed everything. The 5 cadets who had once mocked her were now witnesses to her true capability, forced to acknowledge her leadership, skill, and resolve. She opened her notebook and wrote, "Leadership is not given. It is earned. Respect is not demanded. It is proven. Fear is temporary. Strength is eternal." She traced the words with a finger, feeling the weight of the day's events. Her body ached, her shoulder burned, but her spirit was unbroken, sharper than ever. Somewhere deep inside, she felt it, a shift. She was no longer just Alyssa Morgan, the cadet who had endured ridicule and doubt. She was Steelheart, a leader forged in pain, tested by adversity, and now recognized by those who had once dismissed her. The Academy had demanded everything she had, and she had delivered. She had commanded respect, led under pressure, and completed the impossible. And the 5 cadets who had mocked her, they had learned a lesson they would never forget. Never underestimate someone with fire in their soul and strength in their heart. By the end of the week, whispers of her performance spread through the Academy. Cadets who had doubted her before now sought guidance, strategy, and inspiration from Steelheart herself. The instructors began referencing her as an example of resilience, leadership, and tactical skill. For Alyssa, it wasn't about fame or recognition. It was about proving to herself and the world that determination, courage, and relentless focus could overcome even the most entrenched skepticism. That mission had changed everything: her reputation, her confidence, and the perception of everyone around her. For the first time, the Academy knew that Alyssa Morgan was not just surviving. She was transforming the very definition of what a SEAL could be. The dawn was gray and ominous, the kind of morning where the chill seeps into bones and fog clings to the water like a ghost. The Naval Academy had prepared a final test, the water trial, a grueling series of aquatic challenges designed to push cadets to their absolute limits. The 5 cadets who had once mocked Alyssa stood at the shoreline, stiff and uncertain. The whispers of the past weeks had shifted from doubt to awe, yet skepticism lingered. She survived everything else. But the water, Thompson muttered under his breath. Alyssa, shoulders still tender from past injuries, but mind and body sharpened, laced her boots, checked her gear, and approached the water calmly. Every cadet knew this would be the ultimate measure of skill, endurance, and willpower. The first challenge was a 200-meter underwater swim, carrying a 50-pound weighted pack. Cadets were required to descend, navigate a submerged obstacle course, and resurface without assistance. Many had tried before and failed, their lungs burning, muscles cramping, panic setting in. Alyssa took a deep breath, visualizing every movement. Her fingers gripped the pack, her legs kicked in rhythm, as she dove beneath the icy water. The cold hit her immediately, stealing her breath and numbing her limbs. Panic clawed at her mind, whispering doubt, but she pushed it aside. Stroke by stroke, she moved with precision, clearing the first obstacle, a submerged maze of pipes and beams. Her lungs screamed, muscles quivered, yet she didn't surface. She focused on control, rhythm, and mental fortitude. Halfway through the swim, a sudden wave of panic hit, an instinctual reaction from the freezing water. Her lungs burned, her arms trembled, and every fiber of her being demanded, she stopped. But Alyssa remembered her father's words. Fear is temporary. Strength is eternal. She pushed forward, visualizing the finish line, visualizing herself on the other side, visualizing the pride of completing what no one thought she could. When she finally emerged from the water, the instructor's eyes were wide, the other cadets stunned. She had completed the swim faster and cleaner than anyone else, her precision leaving no room for error. The 5 cadets exchanged nervous glances. Thompson muttered, She's untouchable." Next came the underwater obstacle crawl, requiring cadets to maneuver through a submerged tunnel system while holding their breath, navigating twists and turns with weighted packs strapped to their backs. Many cadets had struggled here, losing balance, surfacing too early, or abandoning the task altogether. Alyssa dove into the murky water, heart pounding, muscles taut with anticipation. She moved with fluid precision, arms propelling her forward, eyes focused through goggles. The water pressed around her like a vice, her lungs a ticking timer, but she ignored it. One obstacle at a time, one breath at a time. She completed the crawl flawlessly, emerging at the exit with lungs screaming, body shaking, but mind intact. The instructors nodded, impressed, while the 5 cadets who had once mocked her grew visibly uneasy. They had underestimated her endurance and focus, and now they knew the depth of her capability. The final test of the water trial was the open water endurance swim, a 3-kilometer swim through choppy, icy waters, requiring cadets to maintain pace while navigating markers and carrying additional weight. The wind whipped across the water, and waves crashed against their bodies, testing stamina, balance, and determination. Alyssa entered the water calmly, ignoring the cold that bit at her skin. She set her rhythm, breath steady, eyes on the markers. Her body, honed through months of relentless training, moved with power and efficiency. She overtook cadets who had left before her, their exhaustion palpable. Halfway through, fatigue struck in waves, burning lungs, quivering legs, numb fingers, yet she refused to yield. Every stroke was a battle won against pain, against doubt, against the limits imposed by fear. At the last checkpoint, a sudden current hit, pulling cadets off course. Some panicked, splashing and flailing, losing precious time. Alyssa adjusted instantly, using the current to her advantage, cutting a diagonal path through the water, conserving energy and maintaining speed. The instructors shouted instructions, but her focus remained unbroken. She visualized the finish line, imagined the mud-soaked ground ahead, imagined the pride and legacy she was building. Every stroke became deliberate, powerful, and precise. Emerging from the water after the 3-kilometer swim, Alyssa staggered to the shore, soaked and exhausted, yet victorious. She had completed the water trial ahead of all cadets, male and female, and without compromise. Her uniform clung to her body, mud streaked across her face, yet her eyes shone with quiet triumph. The 5 cadets who had mocked her before now watched in stunned silence. Thompson's jaw was tight, Miller's hands trembled slightly, and Riker's disbelief was obvious. They had laughed once, doubted her, mocked her, and now they were forced to witness her dominance, skill, and unbreakable spirit. She's a SEAL, Hayes whispered, awe in his voice. The instructors debriefed the cadets, commending Alyssa's performance. Cadet Morgan's execution of the water trial was exemplary. Calm under extreme conditions, precise, strategic, and relentless. Her endurance and mental fortitude set a new standard for this academy. Applause erupted, and whispers of Steelheart spread among the cadets. Her reputation had reached legendary status. The nickname was no longer casual or whispered. It was respected and feared. The 5 cadets approached, heads lowered, expressions a mix of embarrassment and admiration. Thompson, the Alpha, finally spoke. Morgan. Alyssa, I underestimated you. We all did. You've earned our respect. Alyssa looked at them, her face calm and unreadable. I didn't do it for respect. I did it because it had to be done. If you want to follow, learn. If not, watch. They nodded silently, humbled. The dynamic had shifted completely. They were no longer the bullies. They were witnesses to true capability and leadership. That night, Alyssa wrote in her notebook, "Water tests the body, mind, and soul. Fear is frozen. Pain is endless. But determination is eternal. Steelheart rises, unbroken, unstoppable, and unyielding." Her body ached, her muscles screamed, her shoulder throbbed, yet she smiled faintly. She had survived the water trial, dominated it, and solidified her legend. The 5 cadets who had mocked her were no longer threats. They had become a mirror reflecting her strength, a reminder that those who doubt must ultimately acknowledge true resilience. Weeks later, word of her water trial performance reached the entire academy. Cadets whispered in corridors, instructors referenced her in training, and the academy's legacy had a new benchmark. Alyssa had proven not only her physical capability, but her mental strength, strategic mind, and unwavering determination. For the first time, Alyssa allowed herself a moment of quiet pride. She wasn't just surviving Hell Week, she had conquered it. She wasn't just Steelheart by name, she was Steelheart by action, forged in pain, honed in water, and tested by fire. The 5 cadets who had mocked her months ago would carry this lesson with them, forever. Never underestimate someone who refuses to quit. Alyssa stood at the shoreline one last time, watching the waves crash. The cold stung, the wind bit, yet she felt invincible. She whispered softly to herself, "This is only the beginning. The world will know what a SEAL can do." The sun had barely risen, casting long shadows across the Naval Academy grounds when cadets were summoned for the final evaluation of the training cycle. Today was the ultimate test, one that combined everything they had learned over months of grueling training: physical endurance, tactical strategy, mental resilience, and leadership under pressure. Alyssa Morgan stood among her squad, shoulder still tender from previous exercises, but her resolve unshaken. She had survived ridicule, injury, and the water trial. Now she faced the culmination of her journey, a test designed to reveal the strongest cadet, the true leader, and the unbreakable SEAL. The mission began with a complex tactical simulation. Cadets were tasked with infiltrating a hostile zone, extracting hostages, navigating obstacles, and completing objectives within a strict time frame. Each squad was evaluated on precision, coordination, and decision-making under extreme stress. The 5 cadets who had once mocked her, Thompson, Riker, Hayes, Miller, and Stone, were assigned to her squad. Their initial reaction was a mix of disbelief and hesitation, now tempered by respect, yet their pride prevented them from fully submitting. Elisa didn't flinch. She took her place at the front, scanning the terrain, calculating every move. "Listen up," she commanded, voice calm, steady, and authoritative. "We move as one. Precision over speed. Eyes on the objective. Watch each other. Cover each other. Follow my lead, and we finish this clean." The squad fell silent, absorbing her instructions. The 5 cadets, who had once laughed at her, now exchanged glances, awe mixed with humility. The first obstacle was a treacherous swamp crossing. Cadets were weighed down by gear, sinking into mud and struggling to maintain balance. Elisa led the way, moving with controlled power, helping teammates when necessary. Miller slipped and almost fell. Without hesitation, Elisa grabbed his arm, steadying him and guiding him forward. "Keep moving," she said firmly. "You're stronger than you think." For the first time, Miller's skepticism dissolved. He nodded, eyes wide with realization. This cadet, once mocked, was a force in every sense of the word. Next came the urban assault simulation, complete with multiple entry points, simulated gunfire, and obstacles that demanded precise coordination. Cadets were forced to move silently, clear rooms, and extract hostages without error. Elisa's leadership shone. She assigned roles with clarity, issued hand signals to maintain stealth, and made split-second decisions that kept her squad safe while completing objectives efficiently. Stone, cover the left flank. Hayes, watch the rear. Thompson, stay with the hostages. Riker, support Stone. Move now. Her instructions were executed flawlessly. Cadets moved as one unit, every decision reflecting her strategic mind and unyielding control under pressure. The instructors observing the exercise were visibly impressed. Captain Davis whispered to a colleague, "I've seen strong cadets before, but she commands like a seasoned officer. Calm, decisive, precise. That's leadership under fire." Halfway through the mission, the squad encountered a simulated crisis, an unexpected obstacle, and a threat that required immediate adaptation. Cadets hesitated, confusion rippling through the group. Elisa's mind raced, analyzing options in seconds. Change formation. Riker, take point. Thompson, cover rear. Miller and Hayes, support. Move quickly. The squad executed the new plan seamlessly, clearing the obstacle without incident. The 5 cadets who had once ridiculed her stared in disbelief. This was beyond skill. It was intuition and command. "She's not just strong. She's a leader," Hayes whispered, awestruck. The final challenge of the evaluation was the hostage extraction and open terrain navigation, designed to test endurance, coordination, and strategic foresight under fatigue. Cadets were exhausted, muscles trembling, lungs burning. Many had faltered in previous attempts. Elisa, however, moved with calculated energy, guiding each teammate through rough terrain. Her commands were precise, her presence steady, and her focus unwavering. "We're almost there. Stay sharp. Cover each other. One step at a time. Eyes forward." The squad responded instinctively, moving as one. Cadets who had doubted her now followed every instruction without hesitation, inspired by her calm authority and relentless determination. During the extraction, one of the 5 cadets, Thompson, became injured, a simulated fracture in his leg. Panic flickered across the team, but Elisa remained composed. "Stone, support Thompson. Miller, assist me. Hayes, cover the perimeter. Riker, guide us through the extraction point. Move." Under her leadership, the squad carried Thompson safely while maintaining mission integrity. Her calm under pressure turned potential disaster into a success, proving that leadership is not just about skill, but resolute action under adversity. The instructors nodded approvingly. They had witnessed her lead, adapt, and inspire in real time, a culmination of months of relentless training and mental fortitude. When the squad completed the mission, cadets collapsed to the ground, exhausted and mud-streaked, gasping for breath. Alyssa herself was drenched, bruised, shoulder throbbing, yet she stood tall, surveying her team. The 5 cadets who had mocked her months ago approached, faces filled with humility, awe, and respect. Thompson, once arrogant and scornful, spoke first. "Morgan, you led us flawlessly. We underestimated you? You've earned our respect, and then some." Alyssa looked at them, expression calm and steady. "I didn't lead to earn respect. I led to complete the mission. The respect is a byproduct of action, not words." Stone nodded silently. Miller's eyes gleamed with newfound admiration, and Riker and Hayes offered quiet acknowledgement. The dynamics of their relationship had completely shifted. They were no longer critics, but witnesses to true leadership and resilience. Later, during the debriefing, the instructors praised Alyssa's performance. Cadet Morgan displayed exceptional leadership, strategic foresight, and mental resilience. She commanded under pressure, inspired her squad, and completed every objective flawlessly. This is the standard by which future cadets will be measured. Applause erupted across the training ground, and whispers of Steelheart were no longer just rumors. They were revered and confirmed. Alyssa had earned her place among the Academy's elite, commanding respect through action, determination, and unyielding willpower. That evening, Alyssa sat on her bunk, notebook open, reflecting on the journey. Months ago, 5 cadets had mocked her, doubted her, and tried to break her spirit. Today, they had witnessed her rise above every challenge, every injury, every ridicule, and emerge as a leader. She wrote, "True leadership is forged under fire, tested by adversity, and proven in action. Respect is earned through courage, precision, and unwavering will. Steelheart is not a name. It is a state of being." For the first time, Alyssa allowed herself a moment of quiet pride. She had not only survived Hell Week and the water trial, but had transformed skepticism into respect, ridicule into admiration, and doubt into acknowledgement of true strength. The 5 cadets who had once laughed at her would carry this lesson forever. Never underestimate someone who refuses to quit, who leads with courage, and who perseveres against all odds. Weeks later, Alyssa would walk across the parade ground during graduation, medal in hand, helmet under arm, Steelheart in reputation and in essence. The 5 cadets, once critics, now stood in quiet respect beside her, having learned the ultimate lesson. True strength is not about mocking others, but about enduring, leading, and inspiring. Alyssa Morgan, once doubted and mocked, had proven herself not just as a cadet, but as a SEAL, a leader, and a legend. The Naval Academy's parade ground was alive with anticipation. Flags snapped in the crisp morning air, sunlight glinting off polished boots and uniforms. Cadets stood in formation, faces a mix of exhaustion, pride, and excitement. Today was graduation day, the culmination of months of grueling training, unrelenting challenges, and tests that had forged the next generation of SEALs. Alyssa Morgan stood among the cadets, shoulders still aching from the final water trial, muscles sore from Hell Week, and eyes bright with determination. She had survived ridicule, pain, and exhaustion. She had led, inspired, and proven herself beyond doubt. Today was the day her journey would be immortalized. The 5 cadets who had mocked her, Thompson, Riker, Hayes, Miller, and Stone, stood silently in formation, a mixture of respect and humility evident on their faces. They had laughed at her, doubted her, and challenged her at every step. But now they were witnesses to a transformation they could never have anticipated. Thompson, once the loudest skeptic, whispered quietly to his comrades, She earned every ounce of this." We underestimated her. Big time. Alyssa caught his eye for a brief moment. There was no arrogance in her gaze, only calm confidence and quiet pride. She didn't need to boast. Her actions had already spoken louder than words ever could. The ceremony began with the commanding officer stepping forward. His voice boomed across the parade ground, commanding attention. Today, we honor the cadets who have endured, survived, and triumphed over one of the most challenging training cycles in the history of this academy. They have proven not only skill, endurance, and mental fortitude, but leadership under fire. Elisa's name was called. Heart pounding, she stepped forward with measured precision, every step echoing on the parade ground. She saluted the commanding officer, who handed her the Medal of Distinction, a symbol of perseverance, courage, and exceptional performance. The crowd erupted in applause. Cadets, instructors, and onlookers alike cheered. Elisa's chest swelled with pride, but it was tempered by humility. She had achieved this not for recognition, but because she had refused to quit, refused to be broken, and refused to let doubt define her. After the formal ceremony, cadets were dismissed to mingle and celebrate. The 5 cadets who had mocked her approached cautiously, expressions a mix of admiration and embarrassment. Thompson, always bold, stepped forward first. Morgan, Alyssa, I don't know how to say this properly, but you've earned our respect more than anyone else here. We underestimated you. Riker nodded in agreement. Miller's eyes reflected admiration, and Hayes and Stone mirrored the sentiment. They had learned a lesson that would stay with them forever. Never judge someone by appearances or assumptions. Strength, courage, and leadership reveal themselves in action. Alyssa smiled faintly. I didn't need you to respect me. I needed to prove to myself that I could do it. The rest is just a bonus. For the first time, the dynamic between them had shifted completely. Where once there was doubt, mockery, and tension, there was mutual respect, understanding, and acknowledgement of ability. Later, Alyssa walked along the shoreline near the academy, helmet in hand, reflecting on her journey. The water glistened under the late afternoon sun, waves crashing rhythmically against the shore. Memories of Hell Week, the water trial, the mock ambushes, and every challenge she had overcome flooded her mind. She remembered the 5 cadets' laughter, the whispers of doubt, and the moments when her body had screamed to quit. She remembered the pain in her shoulder, the freezing cold, the exhaustion that had nearly claimed her resolve. Yet, she had endured. She had transformed fear into focus, doubt into determination, and mockery into motivation. Every obstacle, every challenge, every moment of pain had forged her into Steelheart, a cadet, a leader, a SEAL. Alyssa paused, looking out over the water. She thought about the lessons she had learned, not just the technical skills, but the deeper truths of resilience, leadership, and courage. She knew that being a SEAL was about more than physical prowess. It was about enduring what others cannot, leading when others falter, and inspiring those around you through action rather than words. She pulled out her notebook and wrote one final entry. Limits exist only to be challenged. Fear exists only to be faced. Leadership is not a title, but an action. Steelheart is not a name. It is the result of endurance, courage, and unwavering resolve. Today, I have proven to myself that no obstacle is insurmountable, and no doubt can define me. That evening, the Academy held a final reception for graduates. Alyssa mingled with fellow cadets, instructors, and family members. Stories were shared, laughter filled the room, and the camaraderie forged in adversity was celebrated. The 5 cadets who had mocked her approached once more. Thompson extended his hand, a rare gesture of humility. To Steelheart, he said, voice filled with genuine respect. Alyssa shook his hand firmly. To the mission, to endurance, and to the lessons we all learn along the way. They smiled, understanding that respect earned through action was far more valuable than words alone. In the days that followed, Elisa's story became legendary within the academy. Cadets told tales of her endurance, her leadership, and the moments she had inspired respect from those who once mocked her. She became a symbol of resilience, determination, and excellence, a benchmark for future generations. The 5 cadets carried the lesson with them forever. Never underestimate someone who refuses to quit, who endures every challenge, and who leads by action. Elisa had taught them that lesson not through words, but through the unbreakable spirit of Steelheart. Years later, when cadets would speak of legendary graduates of the Naval Academy, one name was always whispered with awe: Elisa Morgan, Steelheart. Her journey from doubted cadet to revered SEAL became a tale of courage, endurance, and leadership. It was a story of proving that true strength lies not in arrogance or ridicule, but in resilience, skill, and unwavering determination. For Elisa, the medal on her chest was more than a symbol of achievement. It was a reminder of the fire she had carried within her, the obstacles she had overcome, and the legacy she had created. She stood on the shore once more, helmet under her arm, watching the waves crash. The past had tested her, shaped her, and defined her. The future was hers to command. "This is only the beginning," she whispered, voice strong against the wind. "The world will see what a SEAL can truly do." The 5 cadets who had mocked her stood at a respectful distance, witnesses to a journey they could never forget, forever changed by the cadet who refused to quit. And so, the legend of Steelheart endured, a testament to courage, resilience, and the power of proving oneself against all odds.